Good morning, everybody. The US and UK governments have launched airstrikes on Yemen, which is a dangerous escalation of the already tense and febrile situation in the Middle East. Now, needless to say, this is absolutely reckless and wrong and should not have happened. What the US and UK government should be doing is trying to relieve tensions and de-escalate the situation, but they've done exactly the opposite. Now, this comes after the Houthis, which are essentially the government in the majority of Yemen. The majority of the Yemeni population lives in North Yemen, or what used to be North Yemen, which is the area controlled by the Houthis. There are fewer people in what used to be South Yemen who are resisting the Houthis, who are called rebels by the mainstream media, but they are essentially the government in Yemen. That is a Shia area rather than the rest of the Arab Peninsula, which is Sunni. And of course, because of that, they have links to Iran, which is also Shia. So what this is about is trying to escalate to war with Iran. And we know this because 20 years ago, just at the time when the US and what they called the Coalition of the Willing started to bomb Iraq, General Wesley Clark gave a seminal speech where he explains the plans of the deep state in the USA and the Pentagon. He said, well, they want to get to war with 7 countries, beginning with Iraq and then Syria and Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off with Iran. And this is what the plan is now. This is the end game of the plan for the new American century in the Middle East, to cause destabilization in the Middle East, but also to buff up the nation of Israel as the whatever it is to be part of the West in that region, rather than being sensible and de-escalating, coming out of the Middle East and letting the Middle East people decide their future for themselves. This is a continuation of Western involvement in a very destructive way in Middle Eastern nations. So, of course, we know what's happened in the last 3 months has been very, very disconcerting and destabilizing, with the Hamas attacks on Israel on the 7th of October, and then Israel killing 20 times as many people already as Hamas did on the 7th of October in Gaza, mostly women and children and innocent men. Half the people that the nation of Israel has killed in Gaza have been women, have been children. 10,000 plus children killed by the nation of Israel in response to what Hamas did on the 7th of October. Both are wrong, and we need to just try to de-escalate. But getting involved in bombing a Middle Eastern country is doing the opposite, and this is just going to go towards drawing more countries into a regional conflagration. And then, as I've said before, escalating and escalating is not going to do any good for anyone in the end if we end up with World War III and people start shooting missiles at each other, potentially nuclear missiles. So we need to de-escalate. And what happened here with Biden and Sunak in the US and UK, Sunak is supported by Starmer, the opposition leader, so-called opposition in the UK, although it's all the uniparty in the UK and the USA at the moment, in terms of the people who are in parliament positions and the presidency in the USA at the moment. They're all acting together, but they support this. But the thing is, this wasn't even held out to any debate in Parliament, which it's supposed to be. Before the UK launches military action, there's supposed to be a debate in Parliament, a vote in Parliament, so at least MPs have the chance to say no and vote it down if they think that it is irresponsible and reckless and the wrong course of action. Well, I wouldn't hold out much hope that the people in the fake Conservative and Labour Party would block any military action like this, because most of them are gung-ho for war and escalation. There are a few people on both sides who would oppose escalation, which is good, but not enough to stop it. But it should have been at least debated in Parliament and discussed, so people would have had the opportunity to possibly put forward arguments against escalation and bombing Yemen, a nation, bombing a sovereign nation, and getting involved in this kind of reckless misadventure. So this has happened. It's very, very dangerous. And, all I can do again is call for de-escalation, because it's impossible to unwrap, all of the different grievances by all of the different sides and different factions in the Middle East. And this is a situation, a conflict that's been going on for 75 years plus. And yes, what's happened this year is an escalation of what happened in October 2023, but that didn't just come out of nowhere. There's, the Jews and the Arabs in Israel, Palestine have been in conflict for 75 years. And, do you go back 2 years, 5 years, 25 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 3,000 years, to ascertain the start of the situation and where things began? You can't unwrap that, because every time someone says, but they did this then, well, the other side will say, well, they did that before, and then they did that before. What's important is that we finish this and stop escalating towards World War III, and stop pushing towards what the deep state want and other people want, which is war with Iran. That's not going to do anything good for anybody. And, it's absolute madness. So what we should be doing is stopping these, but here we are. I mean, I wish I could be in the Houses of Parliament and 10 Downing Street so that this would not have happened, and we would be using our armed forces to try to make peace rather than to escalate war. We are in very dangerous times, and we're going to see who's who today, and we're going to see who comes out and makes all sorts of excuses for why bombing is the right thing. But we're also going to see who is for de-escalation and for peace. And most of this is done for the benefit of Israel, the nation state that calls itself Israel, rather than any other country. But this could all stop if the bombing, ethnic cleansing of Gaza stops as well, because one thing leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another, and we've got to get off that train rather than seeing it through to the destination of World War III. So let's hope in the coming days that cooler heads will prevail, this bombing campaign will stop. President Trump has already come out and condemned Biden for bombing Yemen, and I do the same to Sunak. He is wrong to do this, and also Grant Shapps, his foreign secretary, obviously is supportive of this as well, being in the government. They are absolutely wrong to take this course of action. They should have taken a different course of action to de-escalate the situation. So let's hope that in the coming days things calm down.